So I was going to do a class today on lead nurturing for online conversion, and it just so happened that Jesse was nice enough to want to partner up with me on this. So what we're going to do, this is going to be part 1 of online lead conversion and nurturing, and we're going to do a part 2 either not next week, but the week after, I believe, if we're in town. We got some travel coming up that we have to do, so there will be a part 2. That's what you guys need to know, so you can come and put it all together. I'll give you a little background on how I met Jesse. I met him in a lobby at a convention called Inman. If you guys haven't been to Inman, you should go next year for sure. What I love about Jesse, what I've got to know about Jesse, is an industry man. Now, when you're an industry man, in my opinion and most professionals' opinion, you know everything important about our industry. So I just had a conversation with him 30 minutes ago that blew my mind. I learned a ton from him. And the only way you can have that kind of information is being an industry man or woman and hanging out at conventions. Since I met Jesse, I've hung out with him at BSM down in Orange County. He was especially invited to our mastermind, the Closing Table, which is the highest end real estate mastermind in the country as far as I'm concerned. So he's been everywhere I've been. I've got to know him. What I've really gotten to know is he understands our business. He understands the consumer side of it. Sometimes we get so jaded on how we feel about us and our egos and how we communicate with the clientele. He talks to enough people to know what works, and he tracks and he improves. And it seems like every day Call Action releases a new integration. I just learned about another one today with Cloud CMA. I'm like, dude, you can't go wrong. So Jesse owns a company called Call Action. Many of you have heard of it. I've spoke about it lots of times. Team Bjorkman is actually using it, testing it, and seeing how we can broaden that. There's a lot of tools that HomeSmart is using that this can do a lot more, actually. So we might talk about that a little bit. You probably talked to Wendy in Phoenix about that. So you probably have a real good grasp about that. We could talk about that. So you guys know me. I never bring anybody here to sell you something, right? We just don't do that. Jesse is not here to sell you something, but I would highly recommend you buy something from Jesse. I can't speak this level like he can, right? So it's a class for you. And unfortunately, there's not 10 of these platforms to say, oh, they're all great, just go ahead and get one, if anything. You know, like lead, when we purchase leads online, we say, I don't care if it's conversion, Commissions Inc., Ylopo, just get something, right? Zillow, Realtor.com, I can't do that with Jesse. Jesse's got a proprietary system that nobody else really has. And if they have something similar, this is better. So no, I'm not trying to totally sell you. I just want you to be sold on the idea. We talk a lot about automation with authenticity. He specializes in that when it's like a robot, but it's not. It's kind of the weirdest thing I've ever seen. We also want to talk about automation, right? And delegation and elimination. This, you can delegate a lot of your tasks to the robot. You can delegate a lot of your time to the robot, all that good stuff. You liking what you're hearing so far?
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know what I've left out. I mean, please tell us a little bit about yourself, but welcome and thank you so much for doing this. Please, you guys, phones, airplane mode. Please, please, please. All right, I'll be over here making sure that Martha's live is the right way. All right.
All right, so nice to meet you all. Thanks for giving me a little bit of your attention. So a little background story about me. In real estate since 1987. So got started as a telemarketer for a mortgage company. When I turned basically 18, got my real estate license and been in it ever since then. So was a mortgage lender for 25 years, did online lead gen since 1987 or 1997 when the internet kind of came out, and was really easily accessible, generated a boatload of leads, got pretty good at that, and now kind of here. So what I like to kind of talk about is exactly what Mike was saying basically, is that online leads, like if you've been in real estate for a really long time, you have this idea like sphere of influence business is the one that you want, and those are great leads, and they are, because the customer is trying to accomplish a very specific thing. Online is a little bit different, requires a little bit of a different mindset. And so I'll open up by kind of getting you into that mindset of the consumer journey, and then basically we'll show you a little bit of some other stuff that we can do as well. So first of all, anyone know how old this iPhone is?
Oh,
Take a guess.
Small.
Right? 10 years. It's only been 10 years, and it's completely transformed our entire lives, right? So this is a mobile revolution that is basically happening, because the cell phone's been around about 30 years or so. So some of you may have had the big brick, the flip phones, and let me see, all of those, right? So I had all of those. So this basically is now kind of a mobile revolution, and it's really impacted our lives and changed our behavior. So let's just think of some of the few things that just this one device has impacted, right? Do we carry cameras anymore?
Nope.
Do we need a flashlight?
Nope.
Radio, map, landline, clock, watch, calendar, newspaper. It's all by just this one device, right? Has really consumed us. And so it's changed basically our behavior pretty dramatically and affected a lot of other businesses. So most of us are going to go online in the real estate space, and what we do is we buy leads, and someone gives you this expression like, oh my God, I found the house that I really, really love, right? And this creates a sense of urgency, right? Because if I've been looking for homes for 12 to 18 months, and I see something I really like, what do you feel at that moment in time? Right? Excitement, urgency, and everything else. So what happens, we want to accomplish a task. And what is that task when I find something online? You want to go see it, right? So it's important to get into this frame of mind, and I'll relate this a little bit to basically the real estate space. Let's say you have a customer that's in your office and you want to write an offer, but you need a pre-qualification letter. And you call Scott, but Scott doesn't answer the phone, right? And all of a sudden, what ends up happening, you call lender B probably pretty quickly, even though you know Scott, right? And this is what ends up happening, is that sense of urgency overrides basically your loyalty to anybody, because you're trying to accomplish your own personal goal, your own task. And we're all tuned into this radio station called WIFM. What's in it for me, right? So online, consumers trying to accomplish a task. So just remember this as you're trying to talk to them. A lot of times what we're thinking is an online lead basically means that the task that they're trying to accomplish is look for a real estate agent. But that's the furthest from the truth. What they're trying to do is accomplish the end goal, which is basically seeing the home, okay? Because it's the one thing that the internet doesn't answer right now. I can basically use Zillow, Realtor.com, or anything else, search everything about a property, know the school district, know crimes, know my mortgage payments, calculate everything. But when it gets down to the nitty-gritty, I still need to reach out and talk to somebody, okay? So some interesting stuff. Many of us would think that, like, okay, real estate is changing very, very quickly. Now, think of buying a car. A car is pretty standard, right? Like if you want a white Honda Accord with a tan interior EX package, they're pretty much the same all over the place. But yet, to this day, still most cars are purchased from a phone call. 78% of phone calls.
Wow.
Right? So do we need to be worried about real estate completely changing? Probably not, because every property is totally different, and we still need that task of talking to someone and feeling comfortable, right? So just think about that. Like if the car business to this day, 10, 12 years later after the internet, is still the vast majority is sold in person and on the lot, we're probably in a pretty good shape here. So some interesting stats. Mobile first. This is our new world, right? We basically look at this before we would look at our spouses or whoever you wake up in the next morning, and it's probably the last person or persons that you look at when you go to bed at night, unless you get lucky. But anyway, so about 80% of the US population has basically a cell phone. Okay, there's 240 million of them in the United States. Now think about it, there's only 300 million people in the United States, so this includes babies, kids, and everybody else. So almost everybody has a smartphone. Now what's caused basically this, what that has affected is it's causing basically everyone to search online using their mobile device, okay? So, but that screen, this is kind of small, right? It's not necessarily that great for big time searching. So what happens, we're using apps, and that apps kind of push that information to you. So if you think of Zillow, I could just press a button, it gives me all the properties all around me, and I can scroll through really, really easily. So this is important when you start thinking about some of your marketing and the stuff that you're doing, is to try and remove that friction that is from that person to communicate with you, okay? Because at the end of the day, this is still a phone, okay? But if you go to your own websites, see how hard it is to find your own phone number, right? So just some things to think about. Average person looks at this about 85 times a day to check their text messages. Now, if you do this over a 12-hour period, that's once every 6 minutes. So we live in a life of distraction, right? We're constantly interrupted between text messages, Facebook notifications, the advertisements that you hear on TV and stuff like that. So this is kind of lead into something that basically we talk about speed to lead in terms of converting a lead. Why does it work? It's not because the consumer instantly, in that moment in time, wants to basically talk to you. It's just that that's when mentally they have the bandwidth, the attention span to basically respond. And that's why responding quickly basically leads to success, okay? So in search behavior, what has happened? If we take a look at search behavior late at night, what we tend to find is that these people are searching usually on desktop, okay? They're taking their time, they're way at the top of the funnel, they're doing research, okay, because they're just farting around on their iPad or basically on their computer. So they're really, really early on. This is why your leads late at night need this really long-term nurture compared to leads that come in during the day, which is typically on a mobile device, is more instantaneous and in the moment. You're closer to transacting. So just being aware of like when the lead kind of comes in is going to give you some insights in terms of the urgency of that customer, okay? So at the end of the day, if basically you need to, if I'm interested in something, am I going to wait and leave a message if I make an outbound phone call?
No.
You instantly call the next person, right? Because we don't even have to dial a phone number anymore. We just click buttons, okay? Because how many of you know your kids' phone numbers? Right. I don't know mine, so. So this is what has happened, how it's affected our behavior. So this is the best chart that I could find. It's actually two charts in one. So the bottom line is actually the growth in the number of iPhones that have been sold since 2007 when it first came out. The top line basically is a survey that the California Association of Realtor does that says, what's your expectation of your real estate agent? How quickly do you expect a response from them if you make an inquiry? Now notice that those two lines really kind of follow each other, right? So there's a direct correlation between the access to the information, the ability to connect with someone, and then the expectations that it creates, okay? Is that going to go the opposite direction? Probably not, right? So this is just our new reality. Once you've added in new apps like Uber and everything else, basically, now this becomes second nature to us. If I don't get what I want instantly, I can go on Amazon and have a product on my front doorstep in an hour. Okay? I can order a car in 5 minutes. But if you guys try and coordinate a listing appointment with basically a listing agent, how long does that take you sometimes? Right? Sometimes 4 or 5 hours just to get a hold of them. So think of that consumer journey, because if you're calling the listing agent and having that difficult time getting a hold of them, what is the consumer basically experiencing? The same exact thing, right? That's what's happening. So this is what it's basically doing in terms of our behavior. Some other interesting facts. So in real estate, if you basically call a company, right now the survey data that's coming back is about 30% of phone calls are abandoned completely. They won't even leave a voicemail. They're just going to call the next company because they have a high sense of urgency and they're trying to accomplish a task. And that task is get into that house, because for 12 to 18 months that they've been looking around, what is all of their friends telling them? The hardest part of the real estate transaction is finding the house that you like. And when you find it, you better move quickly, right? Is this what you tell your customers? Probably.
Yes.
Okay. So what you'll also notice is that because we're on mobile, there's some other new behaviors that are basically happening, which is what we call click to call, right? 10 years ago, this didn't exist. If we wanted to basically call a company, we looked for the phone number, dialed the phone number, and made the outbound phone call. There's a little bit of friction in that. But now basically I just see a button that says call and I just press that button and I'm instantly connected. So the amount of friction for us to call somebody else has gone way, way down. I can just scroll down the list and call the next person. That is significantly easier than leaving a 30-second voicemail and hopefully getting a call back. Because how many of you are checking your voicemails on a regular basis right now? Right? You just hit redial because that's the easiest, because we feel so rushed, we don't even listen to the message anymore, we just hit redial.
Right.
And there's a little trick with that I'll explain to you a little bit later on. So as basically time progresses, calls are exploding. There's actually more phone calls happening because people are trying to connect. So most of you probably get a significant amount of missed calls on a daily basis. Maybe you call back, once, right? If you don't recognize the caller ID. And if you do, they don't pick up at the other end because they don't recognize their caller ID, so nobody talks to each other, right? It's a fascinating thing. We all have phones, nobody talks to each other. So some interesting stats that we can kind of go through. You guys already know everybody's searching online for homes, okay? But some of the more interesting stuff that comes around in here is that 72% of people are using online apps, Zillow, Realtor.com, Redfin, and are also using Google search, basically. So the vast majority of people are driving around, and this is how they're finding those homes, right? How many times have you gone around and you're like, wow, look at that house, pulled out your Zillow app to figure out basically what the price of that property is, or Redfin, or anything like that. Now, what you'll also see is that 58% of people, and this is staggering, found the house that they purchased on their own, right? They're the ones telling you, this is the house that I want, come show it to me, and I'll write the offer with you. So what does that do as your value proposition? Are you in the business of finding homes for people, or are you in the business of delivering a service and an experience? Okay? So it's really important to start making that distinction as time basically progresses, because that is not going to reverse. We're always going to be here because people need that support. Okay? But our job in terms of what we do is going away from finding the homes to basically creating the experience and enabling that experience. And this is what most of these new companies are trying to basically focus on. So, but really interesting stuff, 50% of people still going to open houses. So traditional business still works, okay? 50% are still gonna call yard signs. How many of you buy online leads here? Anybody? So what's the number one thing that they ask you on an online lead? Are you the listing agent?
Yeah.
Right? It's the path of least resistance, because how often have you played the game of telephone? You guys remember game of telephone in elementary? Right? I call, basically I tell the secret to a friend, by the time it goes down and it comes back to me, the story is all messed up. So think of this from a consumer point of view. I call, or I respond to an online lead, and they say, hi, yes, I can show you that house, let me call the listing agent. The listing agent's gonna call the seller. The seller's gonna call back the listing agent's gonna call you, and you're gonna call your customer. Does that sound frictionless, or does that sound painful? Right? So because we know that in all of those lines of communication, it's really important for you to take advantage of using the phone and being available as much as you possibly can to connect with people and make that experience really seamless for them. So even just changing your script a little bit on those phone calls or on those leads that come in, not that I'm advocating lying to people, but you should basically be very careful in the words that you choose, basically in terms of telling them what the experience is going to be, right? So there's some things to kind of think about. So let's think about this real estate search process. What are we doing as customers? How does this begin? So let's think about buying a car, okay, instead of real estate initially. Because if we want to buy a car, what ends up happening? You're driving your current car and you're like, man, my car sucks, right? It's starting to break down, it's getting expensive, it's getting too old, or whatever it might be. So you start daydreaming or aspiring to buy a new car. And then what ends up happening is you finally make that mental decision like, okay, I'm buying a new car, now which car, right? So then you start figuring out what price range. This is when you get into basically the research phase. Look at reviews. You're gonna check prices, gas mileage, all those things that are kind of important to you. Once you've narrowed that down, then you're gonna get into what we call transactional phase. And this is where you're gonna say like, calling dealer number 1, dealer number 2, walking over there, and I'm doing a price comparison. If we relate that story back to real estate, what ends up happening is someone is gonna say, I'm tired of living with my parents, right? Or my house is getting too small, or I have another kid, or whatever it might be. Usually something that's life event driven is the number one reason why people move. Okay, so think about that for marketing. Life event driven experiences is what causes people to move. So you'll be in this aspirational phase at the very beginning, and this usually lasts somewhere between 12 and 18 months. Someone's daydreaming about buying a house, right? In that meantime, what they're doing is they're talking to their friends and family. They're finding out, like, you know, are you happy that you bought a house? Did it go up in value? And they're just kind of getting that feeling, basically, of what is home ownership like, okay? Slowly convincing themselves. Then one day they're gonna go like, okay, I think we can do this. Now they're gonna get online, and when they talk to all their friends, they're gonna say like, make sure you buy a house that you can afford. Know what the mortgage payment's gonna be. Know what the down payment is gonna be. So basically people will contact Scott, usually pretty on in the process, basically, if they're an online company, to figure out like, do I even qualify to be able to buy a house? It's that first phase of research, okay? So they'll do this usually for 3 to 6 months. They find out about their credit, maybe they try and clean some stuff up, and then maybe they'll take a look and realize that they don't have enough savings, so they gotta work on their savings a little bit. Because when you talk to a lead right now, what's the number one reasons why they don't buy right away?
Go down.
Down payment, closing, credit, right? Maybe in a lease, something like that, or they're waiting for some life event. Kids get out of school, divorce to end, whatever it might be. Okay. Once they hit that bottom of the funnel, what we call transactional, and you can see this if you guys have online websites like Ylopo or Commissions Inc. or Boomtown, top of the funnel, you'll see people's searches all over the place. All kinds of different price ranges, right? 1 second they're in one city for 500 grand, the next time they're in a different city for $1 million, and they're just all over. But as they get deeper down that funnel, they start to narrow down and really start to hyper focus on an area, okay? When the time they hit that transactional phase, they're down to like really an area, and they usually know that area better than you do because they've probably been looking for 12 to 18 months. That's been on their radar. So they know every house that's been on there for sale. They know the streets, they know everything about that. So when you're basically approaching these customers, it's important for you to be very knowledgeable about those areas, but also be hyper aware that they're just as knowledgeable as you. Okay, so don't talk down to those customers in terms of like, I know everything, because the reality is that they've been researching that one place probably more intently than we have, and even though we're the professionals, okay? So in this transactional phase, usually what will end up happening is the first kind of properties that they go to is open houses. Because they're testing the water. They're like, okay, these real estate agents, I don't want to be sold anything, so I'm going to go to an open house first to see if I'm interested, or to see what 550 in Santa Clarita buys me, right? And they'll go into 1 or 2 of those kinds of homes, and they'll finally basically be kind of committed at that point, and then they start finding an agent and setting appointments and going specifically to houses, because after they see the first one, they get a little bit more excited, and then more excited, and then more excited, until they see about 5 or 6, then they start getting frustrated, and more frustrated, because they're having a hard time finding the right house, right? So the closer they are to the bottom of the funnel, the higher the sense of urgency for them, okay? So just think about that. Simple thing that you can do. NAR studies have done this a ton, so has Zillow. 50,000 studies on home buyers, and it's an average of 10 homes is what people are going to look at. So a really simple question for you is like, hey, how many homes have you already looked at? If they say 5, well, you're pretty darn close. You probably only need to show them 5 more, right? But if you meet them at an open house, be prepared in your scripting to say basically, let me show you some other homes, and try and get to that 10 mark. And if you think about it from this other way, NAR has some interesting studies that basically say at an open house, about 8% of homes are sold via open house, right? That's basically almost 1 in 10. So if someone looks at 10 homes, you have a 1 in 10 chance basically of selling them. So if you're at the open house, that's pretty good odds, much better than Vegas basically. So just think about that as you're kind of working with your customers. So again, this access to information, the sense of urgency, when you combine those things, this is the new consumer. And we are those same consumers when we basically look at ourselves in terms of the way that we treat our lenders or vendor partners or any product. You go to a restaurant or anywhere else, if it's not exactly your way and your pace, you're moving on or you get frustrated. So consumers are thinking about the same thing as us. So just be hyper aware of that, because it makes it easier for you to deliver that experience. So what this study is from the NAR, basically, or from the California Association of Realtors. And it's a really interesting thing. What you can see is 50% of people want an instant response when they make an inquiry. But the reality is that less than 18% of real estate agents acknowledged through the survey, and probably half of those are lying anyway, are saying that they respond instantly to every inquiry. Okay? And then you can see that gap between those two, the expectation of the consumer and the reality of what the agent delivers, or most of us deliver. That gap between the two is the opportunity. If you're anywhere above that, you're basically winning. Okay? This is why speed to lead and teams and everything else basically are doing so well, because they've implemented systems to meet that expectation. Okay? It's really, really simple at the end of the day. Okay? So this is the consumer experience and why that expectation keeps to go up, and why we feel that consumers are basically flaky, right? They have no loyalty. They're bouncing around all over the place. And this is because what ends up happening is if they send a text message, about 45% of the time they'll get an answer, but 55% of the time they'll never get an answer. If they make a phone call, 30% of the time they never get a call back, right? If I send an email inquiry, 50% of the time I'm not getting a response. So most of you will probably remember you only stuck your finger in an electrical socket once when you were a kid and you learned your lesson, right? Mm-hmm. 2, shame on you. So what's a consumer basically experiencing? Because this is the reality of what they're experiencing. They're making inquiries and not getting anything back. So what they do is they contact the next person, okay? That's the reality that we live in today. So this is a study from Keller Williams, basically, that was done through Baylor University. We know that we should be responding really, really quickly to leads. This is consumer expectation. But the reality is, look at that disconnect between the two. So if you're responding in a short amount of time, you're naturally going to basically win. Okay? Just that simple. We want the path of least resistance. We're willing to pay more as long as it's in my time frame. And this is why basically, as long as you're basically being responsive and you can engineer an experience that's really high level that meets the consumer demands, you're going to win. Okay, so you just have to think of that. That's why we talk about systems quite a bit. So here's what ends up happening. Some of you may buy Zillow leads, and Zillow has this thing called Premier Agent Concierge Services. Yes. Right? Mm-hmm. So there's 170 people in Colorado that basically respond to about 35 million leads. Now, why did Zillow create this? Do you think it's basically to help you? Right? Because this is what was happening, is that they are selling leads to us, and 50% of the time we don't even bother calling back the lead that we actually paid for. Okay? So as a consumer, do you associate that as Joe over at that real estate company didn't call me back, or do you associate the experience to Zillow? To Zillow, right? So Zillow created this service to protect their own brand, because they're investing hundreds of millions of dollars to make this happen and to get this good reputation, but yet the agents that they're selling the leads to is kind of going downhill. Okay, so they create that system. So just be aware of that. Over time, what you'll also see in this study directly from them is that only 24% of the consumers or leads get one follow-up attempt. One, right? And if that follow-up attempt, you got their voicemail, what makes you think that they're going to call you back if they don't recognize the caller ID? For you guys, a phone call is worth 40 grand, right? Yeah. And a lot of times we don't call back, or we call once, right? Why would a consumer do anything different? Okay, it's really important to start thinking about that. 2 attempts, less than 10%. And you always hear like, oh, these mega teams are doing so great, and you get these people that are doing, 80, 90, 100, 200, 300 transactions. It's because they're in that top 10, 12%, right? They're making multiple attempts. What we know is if you try somewhere between 5 and 10 times, about 90% success rate. So I'm busy at that moment. You got to try again, and then eventually you guilt them into basically responding, right? So top 5 reasons why basically consumers pick their agents. This is really, really important. I want you to think about it and think about how you've purchased other products in the past too, okay? First to respond, 10, 12%. So you got a chance 1 in 10 just being the first one to call back. Has nothing more to do than you're just first. And they have a really high sense of urgency and they're trying to accomplish the goal. They're trying to accomplish the task, which is get into that property, okay? Most responsive, if you look at those two, it's really kind of the same, right? I translate most responsive as the person who calls back first, and who calls back most often is the person who's going to win, okay? Same thing with most aggressive. I don't think it means that, it's the person that goes over there and hits them over the head, although we want to do that sometimes to some of our customers, especially after you show them 10 homes. But generally speaking, if you look at all of these, look at how important the primary decision related to picking an agent is just based on response rate. Has nothing else is really important. Knowledge is not that important. The fact that you previously used an agent, again, not so important. Okay? What's important is at that moment in time when I have peak sense of urgency, is there someone there to help me? And whoever it does, they're gonna show me that house and I'm gonna write the offer with them. Now this leads me to most responsive. If you look at that middle column, you see how almost 30% of home sellers, their number one reason is someone who's responsive. Now think about this for a second. A home seller starts as a buyer first. Okay? So they're already experiencing the fact that people are not returning their calls when they're making inquiries. But every agent that they interview is going to say, I'm going to get your home sold. Right? And in their mind, what are they thinking? They're thinking, well, if you don't answer your phone, I don't know how you're going to get basically the property sold. Right? Very tight correlation between those two things. So that experience of basically the yard sign and someone inquiring on that property, it's very, very critical for you to be hyper aware of those opportunities and responding quickly. Because how many of you on, let's say, your yard signs or any of your listings get the famous phone call, which is, how much is your listing on 123? Because they can't find it on the MLS yet. Yep. Right? And then you tell them the price, $575. They go, oh, okay, thank you. It's a little too much. Click, hang up. And you're like, oh, tire kicker. Okay. You want to know the reality is? It's usually the neighbor. Yeah. Okay. And it's the neighbor who's starting to fish basically to try and get information about what their property could sell for. So really, really important. So again, response times, this will be the last slide on this, and then I'll show you a little bit in terms of what we do because I'm probably almost out of time. So we often hear about this 5 minutes or less. And I say basically the reason why it's 5 minutes or less is because after 5 minutes you got some other text that stole your attention, right? Because if we're getting a text message 85 times a day and we got that 5 or 6 minute increment, pretty soon we're distracted by something else. But the reality is that there's a really big difference between responding instantly to a transaction or an inquiry versus even just 5 minutes later, okay? It's about 400% difference, okay? And if you answer right from the very beginning, it's even higher, right? Because you've eliminated basically that friction of trying to call back and a person not recognizing the caller ID or anything else. It was really, really important for you on that side of things. So anyway, what I would say is just remove communication roadblocks as much as you possibly can. Some tips for you, look at your email signature. Make sure you're not using an image with your phone number in that image, because if that's the case, I can't click it, right, to call you back. What am I going to do? I'm going to do a Google search because it's faster, okay? So really, really simple little things. Look at your website, look at all your marketing. Do you have a phone number that's prominently displayed so that people can get a hold of you? Because the only time they're going to call is when they're at that peak sense of urgency and the internet does not answer their question. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. So the rest of the stuff, I'll basically bypass some of that, and I'll show you a little bit in terms of what we do and the way it basically kind of works. So if you think of all of your marketing that you do out there, it all relates to try and get an inquiry. That inquiry is going to be a phone call, a text message, or an email. Pretty simple. Facebook Messenger is starting to get pretty popular, but it's still not going to be the way. I'm not opening up the yellow pages or doing a Google search to end up on Facebook Messenger to contact the business, okay? So those 3 primary forms are usually the main way that people do business. Call action, we give you a tracking phone number for basically that communication. That phone number can receive text messages, and it can also receive emails, okay? So what happens is if you're doing some marketing and you have your yard sign out there, and I'll use this as an example because all of us can relate to this. What phone number is on your yard sign right now?
Cell phone.
Cell phone, okay? What happens when you get a phone call and you don't recognize the caller ID? What do?
Answer.
You answer?
No.
Okay.
These are good agents, Jess.
Okay,
They're saying you're
I'm
normal
just
agent.
saying. All right, so ideally we should answer, right? But there's times that you're not going to be able to, okay? And if you try and call that person back, think of how that consumer is basically happening there. How did they end up in front of your listing? Probably use their phone, use the GPS. We know that almost everyone's got Zillow or Realtor.com on their phone. So they call the sign first because they want to talk to the person that has the answer, the path of least resistance. If you don't answer, they hang up. They're already looking at pictures of the property on Zillow or whatever website that they found, and they hit call. Okay? This is why even if you call back a minute later or 2 minutes later, that difference in that conversion goes way, way down because they have already moved on. And that's why when you call, they don't answer. And they're not going to wait there 20 minutes to get an answer back from you. Okay? So understanding the context of the consumer and where they're at in a journey becomes really important. So what we recommend is that you would use a call tracking phone number on each one of your individual marketing pieces, starting with the yard sign. Because if you're the listing agent, we know that 50% of the time you answer the phone, that person walks in, you have a 1 in 10 chance it's the property they're going to like, they're going to write the offer with you, right? Odds are in your favor. So the quickest way for you to do more business is to basically maximize the revenue potential of each one of your listings, okay? Start there. It's a lot easier to double end a transaction, even though that may seem sacrilegious to some of you basically, than it is to go out and get more listings or work with more buyers, right? Why not do it all in one transaction? It's what probably the consumer wants anyway. They want less parties involved. We're trying to remove friction. So when you use a call tracking phone number on that yard sign, you understand the context, like this person is standing in front of my house right now, okay? You're gonna do, if you miss the call, what are you gonna do? You're gonna call that lead back like 10 times, right? Because you know that that opportunity, if it's your listing, is worth $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. Okay, but if you're sending it to your cell phone, and I already asked you all earlier, and the trick question is how many times do you call back? Most of you said maybe once, right? How much money are we leaving on the table? Right? Thousands and thousands, and for some of you, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Say a little story, a customer of ours, you know him, Barry Jenkins from Lab Coat. So this agent carries about 20 listings, and he tells me, he's like, we don't get phone calls anymore. I'm like, okay, how do you know you don't get phone calls? He's like, I don't get any voicemails. He's like, I get maybe 5 voicemails a month. I'm like, okay, that doesn't mean you don't get phone calls. It just means that you don't get voicemails, right? 2 totally different things. So finally convinced him to basically put a call action phone number on his yard sign. First, he didn't want to invest in the signs because he's like, well, it's $50 a sign. So we gave him basically the idea to use those reflective backgrounds like on a stop sign. You reprint basically your signs with that reflective background sticker with basically your new phone number on there. It costs about $8 a sign. And it achieves 2 things, because half of the year it gets dark pretty early, and when people are driving home now they can actually see your sign, right? So he went from thinking he gets no phone calls or 7 or 8 phone calls to the reality of using a call tracking phone number, realized he's getting about 250 phone calls a month from his yard sign. People would call, no answer, hang up, call somebody else, okay? Right now, that is his primary source of business, selling between 3 to 5 homes a month, double ending from those phone calls. Okay, he's basically made an extra 300 grand just by basically doing that one little thing. Okay, so it's really important. If most of us are doing 5, 6, 7 transactions a year, and we happen to double end one side, the reality is that's almost a 20% increase in your business. Do it twice, it's a 40% increase in your business, right? From just that one transaction. So it's a lot easier for you to scale up that way than to try and do a lot more deals. You don't need to buy more leads, you just need to do a better job at basically responding to the ones that you're getting and following up a little bit better. So this is kind of our interface. What call action will do is we'll send you a text message before your phone rings by about a second or two, letting you know you're getting a call from whatever your lead source is. So if you have a phone number on a yard sign, you basically tag that phone number as a yard sign phone call. So you're gonna know, like, I'm about to get a yard sign phone call, I better take this. The reason why we do that is mentally it just puts you in that right frame of mind. How many of you, when you get a phone call, you do this mental Rolodex, you listen to the voice and you're like, who is this person? Like, do I know them? And you're already distracted at the very beginning of that transaction. But when you just get that heads up and you know someone's in there, instantly you got game face on, basically. And mentally you're ready to attack that and be in the moment and actively listening to the customer. Okay? Really, really important thing there. So if you miss the phone call, what call action will do is we're going to wait about 35, 40 seconds to make it seem very natural. We'll send back a text message to the customer and tell them, like, hey, I'm on another call right now. How can I help you? Okay. Now, all of you can do this on your own using your phone, and you probably should. Save that message, miss the call, send back that text message instantly. Okay? You don't need us to do it, but I'll tell you some reasons why you probably should anyway, because if you can't take the phone call, then you probably can't send the text anyway. So anyway, aside from that, what we'll do is if that person responds, we're going to give you 4 minutes to reply back, because they're going to say, hi, I'm standing in front of your listing. I want to schedule a showing. That's the question we texted to them. We asked them, how can I help you? You already know what they want to do because you know where the context of that person is. They're standing in front of your listing, right? So now basically what will end up happening is we give you 4 minutes to reply. If you don't, call action will send a second text message that says a reasonable expectation. Hey, give me 45 minutes. Should I call, text, or email you? If that customer is really urgent, and they're like, please call me back as soon as possible, now you already have an idea of that consumer, where they're at in that journey, right? Do they have a high sense of urgency? Hang up what you're doing, make the phone call, okay? That's basically a little bit what we do. We also record all of the phone calls that do come in. And if you see up here, like this was a 45-second conversation, we transcribe that entire phone call into text. So depending on what CRM system you basically have, we have a bunch of API integrations, Follow Up Boss, Top Producer, Boomtown, Commissions, Inc., Chime, Contactually, a bunch of them. We'll take those entire phone call conversations, transcribe to text, put them in the notes of your CRM system, so that now you have access to all of that information anytime that you want. You'll see in this particular one here at the bottom, it looks like I missed the call, so it says, hey, good morning, it's Jesse, just missed your call, how can I help you? And then we do an automatic follow-up if the person doesn't respond 45 minutes later. And I'll see if I have another conversation here. That's a longer phone call. Those are all longer phone calls. So we'll just take this last one here. Here on the left-hand side, what you could basically see is we captured all of the information about that particular lead. So now you have something to follow up with and you know where it came from. We recommend, I'll use Barry Jenkins again, and as an example, we have customers that will run a phone number on their Yelp profile, because what they want to know is, like, is this call coming from Yelp? And the reason why is, if I'm on Yelp, what's the task that I'm trying to accomplish? Looking for an agent, right? I'm not looking for a home. I'm not trying to schedule a showing. I'm actually looking for an agent if I'm on a review site. That lead is one of the best leads that you can possibly get, right? So just think of the task and where they're finding you. This is why understanding the context of where they're coming in from is so valuable for you, because now you know, you can understand where they're at in that funnel and that journey basically, and how you need to follow up with them. Okay, so here on the left hand side we'll give you all of the details like that. We take a simple phone number and we're going to do what's called a reverse data append. So from that phone number, most of you have probably filled out a form online. You may have gone to an oil change company. They all ask you for your phone number, right? Anywhere you go. If you look at the little terms of services, oftentimes what ends up happening is those companies are selling your information. Okay, it's just that simple. And companies like us will buy basically data from those companies that are selling that data, and now we can start identify that person who is calling. And because everyone is getting rid of their landlines and we're using almost our cell phone number for everything, it's almost the new social security number. Because think about that for a second. It's limited to one person, right? So we're able to get a lot of data about that person. So in this case, this person, from just a phone call, we got email addresses off of them, full name. If people apply for credit and they use that cell phone number as part of that credit application, sometimes they'll get demographic data, age, marriage, you know, white collar, blue collar, do they have kids, all of those kind of things. We give you this data not so that you're a stalker or you're creepy or anything like that, but it's so that you can be a great salesperson. Because for you to be a good salesperson basically means you need to build rapport. And building rapport means you need to find something in common, right? So if you're able to look at this and all of a sudden know that they might have kids, it's really easy for you to salt the conversation and be like, hey, do you have any kids? Right? Now all of a sudden that relationship becomes personal. Okay? And this is we do business with people we know and like. Usually we gotta like them first before we're gonna take the time to know them, right? So it's asking those questions. Rapport building and real salesmanship is really important. There's a book out there called EQ, or Emotional Intelligence. Anyone read it here? Emotional Intelligence? So it's the #1 determinator of your success is how well you can basically relate to people. It's your emotional intelligence, okay? So your ability to do that is becoming a lost art because we're all hiding behind social media and text messaging and stuff like that. But when you connect with someone and have a conversation, take the time to be an active listener. Be interested in them so that they get interested in you, and you're going to earn that opportunity to do their business. So this is why we give you some of that data, but really the best part is this data that we try and find. If we can find an address from that phone call, then we're going to backfill it with all the information that we can find on that person. Okay? Now think about this really quickly. If I get an inbound phone call on a piece of property and that person says like, hey, you know, I'm interested in your property in 123 ABC Street. You're like, great, you know, here's the price. And all of a sudden you realize, hey, this guy owns a house, owns it for 25 years, got a bunch of equity, right? Your normal frame of mind right now is that you're like, this is a buyer, I'm gonna help him as a buyer, right? But if you understand this information, how easy is it for you to all of a sudden just say, yeah, the seller, you know, is motivated, the price is $575. The one thing he's concerned about is contingency offers. What's that buyer gonna say at that point? He's gonna go, contingency offer? What is that, right? And now all of a sudden you can take control of that conversation. You're no longer a door opener or basically helping that agent accomplish a task. Now basically you're a source of knowledge and education, which in turn is going to build basically rapport and respect and trust, right? Because now you can say, well, what that process is, if you happen to own a home that you need to sell in order to buy this one, and we know that's about 50 or 60% of people, okay? That transaction of coordinating those two things is what's called a contingency offer. A lot of times, basically, people need to sell a house and their closing happens too quick and they got to move in with their parents. I'm sure you'd love to move in with your in-laws right now, right?
Nope.
And they'll go like, nope, that's the last thing I want to do. Or move into an apartment or anything else. Now, if you tell that story and you paint that picture, what's going to end up happening with that customer, right? Are they going to respect you all of a sudden? Because you just educated them about something that's totally different that no other agent has done. Because if they've made those 10 other inquiries on other properties, always with a different agent, They basically just looked at them like the task I'm trying to do is open the door. Open the door, you let me in, all right, thanks. And if you're not good at building rapport, you never establish trust, okay? And from being someone at the other end, I can tell you, we see a lot of data of average call length of phone calls. You know what the average length phone call is? Less than a minute.
45 seconds.
Yep. Now, your goal should be, if you get an inquiry, try and talk to that customer for as long as you possibly can, right? Because the longer you can get that person to open up and get them to start telling their story, they don't want to tell that story to anybody else. And all of a sudden, you're instantly their agent, right? If you're basically like, hey, why are you interested in, buying, or what, you have kids, and let's say it starts off with the kid story, and then it's like, well, the kids want to go into school, and then if you are good at developing a relationship, maybe you find out they're getting a divorce. And now all of a sudden that becomes really personal and they don't want to tell that story to anybody else. Is that person going to go and work with somebody else? Probably not, right? Take the time to go really, really deep with that customer. As I told you, I was basically a mortgage lender for 25 years. So we had a little company in 1999 that came out called Lending Tree, right?
Yeah,
Little company. Lending Tree, basically, I remember being at Inman in 1998. Doug Lebda goes on stage and Brad Inman asked him, how many deals have you guys done? And he said, 7. And the whole entire place started laughing at them, right? And he's like, yeah, okay, no problem. A couple years later, doing millions of transactions. Well, my Lending Tree back then is your Zillow today, okay? Prices compete. I'm just trying to accomplish my goal. All I want to do basically is get the best deal on my mortgage for the cheapest price. For you guys is, I just want to see the house. I just want to get into it. I don't need an agent. See the parallels there, basically? So what we found basically in working hundreds of online leads when I was a mortgage lender was that if I just took the time to slow down and really go deep with those customers, I earned that business. Okay? Because they don't want to tell those stories over and over and over. So just take that time to slow down. You'll notice a lot of times you call some other agent and they always seem in a rush. Everyone wants to get off the phone as quickly as they can. Slow down a little bit because people will feel good when you slow down for them. Okay? So this data right here on the left-hand side, that's kind of the use case for that and the reason why we do that. You can return text messages, phone calls, all through here if it's tied into your CRM. We take all of this data and do all of the data entry for you. Because if you're getting a call from your yard signs, how many times does that lead or that phone call end up in your CRM? Right? Maybe you at the bar and you wrote it on a piece of paper and it ended up in your pocket, and then like you did the wash and all of a sudden you're like, well, there went 50 grand, right? So by having a phone number to capture those leads for you, this is the most motivated person, right? It's the only reason why they're calling is because the internet doesn't answer their question, and this is why they want to reach out to you. So call action can help you capture all of those leads, make sure you don't lose that opportunity. If you're doing direct mail, how do you know it works? Right? How do you know it works if I'm doing EDDM? Unless you're tracking the amount of calls that you're getting back. But if you only have a website on there, did that website visitor come from that direct mail piece? Okay? Pull the website off, put a phone number in there, make it easy for people to get a hold of you, and start tracking that, because if they are calling, they are at the bottom of the funnel and ready to do something. In here, you could do really simple things, like in call action, you can have a bunch of pre-saved messages to make your business a little bit more efficient. Like I have one that's pretty popular here. Where's that sucker at? I love Calendly, okay? So I like Calendly a lot because coordinating an appointment to meet with someone is a pain in the butt, right? But if I get an inquiry, I click this, takes me 1 second, I hit text, I let that person pick their own appointment, okay? And all I do is I just follow my schedule. Now some interesting stuff that you can do with Calendly, and these are some tips that I'll give to you. You can create individual URLs. Basically, you see this extension here at the end, it says, let me see if I can put it up there a little bit better. See where it says 20 minutes? So this is a 20-minute meeting. You can do that for your individual listing. And when you take a listing, tell the seller, like, we're gonna try and keep appointments or property showings between 12 and 4. Is that okay with you? Maybe they'll say yes, right? So create a Calendly link with the address of that property. 12 and 4. In Calendly, you can actually set the appointment to say, like, no one can book an appointment in less than 4 hours from right now. Someone inquires about your property, send them that text message like, here, book your own appointment. Okay? Now the customer, you removed all of the friction, can book their own appointment for that showing. Now I'll show you another little company that's out there. Let me see if I can find them really quick. Think of the consumer experience again, because this is important. I'll just search any one of these, doesn't matter. So Redfin, see this little box right here? If I'm on this website, or I'm on the app, do I want to call an agent, talk to an agent? What am I trying to accomplish? What's the task?
Get into the house.
Look what they're doing. Okay? If you listen to the investor calls, like I listen to a lot of the investor calls from Glenn Kelman and all of these publicly traded companies, because what happens, you can gain a lot of insight from there. Glenn on the last phone call happened to say, like, yeah, the reason why Redfin is growing 40% year over year is just because we've made it easy for people to schedule showings. Because this doesn't feel like I'm filling out a lead form.
Right.
Feels like I'm going to accomplish my goal, right? Now, if I click on this, what's it going to ask me? My name, my phone number, my email, okay? It's still the same exact process if I go through here. And in Calendly link, it's the same exact thing. Pick your date, pick your time, hit next basically, and then what ends up happening is that they're asking for your information, okay? You can do the same thing with Calendly for 10 bucks a month, okay? Really, really powerful tool for you. Tie it into your Google Calendar, let basically the customers pick it, okay? Put that link on your Facebook ads, okay? When they fill out that form, they're gonna put their real phone number because they're trying to accomplish the goal, and they don't think that you are going to spam the crap out of them. They think that they're gonna get basically a showing, okay? Really, really simple tool for you. So these companies are trying to engineer basically the experience. And this is what we need to do. You're all individual business owners, and you need to engineer the best experience for that consumer. And you start that by understanding what they're trying to accomplish. So anyway, that's a little bit in terms of what we do. Any questions I can answer for you guys?
So one thing you're,
All right.
and what you're talking about here is response ratio. Right?
Yes.
You're not talking about actually converting the lead into a sale, but what you're talking about is making sure that you get the best chance of potentially converting that lead.
Correct.
Okay.
Because if we already show, the data shows that the first person to respond, nearly 50% of the time, that's the person who gets the deal. So that's where it starts, right, is that first response. Your sales skills and everything else, I mean, that's, you know, everyone starts off as being able to close a certain amount of transactions because there's 4 main personality types, and usually we relate to one of them because that's us. And it's really easy for us to sell that person. As you become a better salesperson, you can transfer into different personality types. And then when you're a really good salesperson, you can do all personality types. That's how you basically become better, right? But sales and relationship building is becoming a lost art because we're all hiding behind everything else, behind technology. But there's a reason why Starbucks, if you think of man, right, as people, we're social creatures. Right? For 40,000 years, we've gathered and huddled together and had conversations. Okay? And over time, what has happened? Went from, you know, being around a mud hut when we were Neanderthals to eventually the campfire, and then, you know, in the 1200s, might be the town square. If you go to Mexico, it's still the town square, right? And now, today, modern day, it's Starbucks, right? Starbucks is a place I can go to, talk to anybody there, zero friction, complain about how long it takes to get my coffee, complain about how expensive it is, but it's just because we want to be social and communicate with someone. This is who we are. This is the explosion of social media, is because we all live in these little boxes. We're so busy, we don't have a time to connect with anybody, so we use social media to try and connect. So when you can finally connect with someone and they take the time to call you and trust you with doing their business, slow down and connect with them. And you're going to earn that business. And this is how basically every online lead becomes your sphere of influence. And if they start off online, Guess what? They might be on Yelp. It is awesome, right? And you're going to get 20 times more referrals because they have the ability to amplify the message for you because they started off on being online. So take away that cynicism of thinking like, oh, all these online leads suck, these people are flaky and they jump all over the place. The reality is they're just like you. We're all online leads in a roundabout way, right? It's just how you look at them and how you basically respond to them. Yes, sir.
Response rate, minute is best. So I am at a listing appointment.
Yep.
Oh, excuse me, I've got to answer the phone.
Well, that's what call action do. If you miss the call, we send a text and start that engagement.
Oh, okay, so you're going to send a text, and I'm not going to be free for about another hour and a half because they've got a lot of questions.
Yeah. So that initial text message that goes out says, how can I help you? They'll say like, oh, I'm interested in scheduling an appointment or something like that. Odds are they can't do it right away anyway. And it would be totally normal for you to say, in 5 hours, we can go and show you that house. They just need that initial engagement so that all you're trying to do is stop them from calling somebody else. If they feel that they're getting a response from you, that is a lot easier than calling somebody else. So even if you say 45 minutes later or an hour and a half later or whatever it might be, somewhere in between that phone call, you could probably just say, excuse me 1 second, and send them a text and be like, it's going to be a little bit longer, it's running a little bit more time. Or if you use those one-click kind of preset messages for us, makes things a lot easier. But it's just the fact people want to be acknowledged, because what happens is history has showed them that if they make inquiries and they don't get acknowledged, they're not going to get acknowledged. Right? So that's the very, very first step, is just simply responding with something, anything, right? That's all that matters. That's why they don't leave a voicemail, because if they leave a voicemail, they don't know if they're going to get that call back. And that's why they just jump into the next person. Yep.
Question. So you were talking about having these different numbers on different properties on your signs. And how would you go about doing that? Just call to action, provide those numbers?
Yeah,
How does that work out?
So in our system, you can go to phone numbers here. Let me see if I'm still connected to the internet. And let's see, you guys are, what's the area code here for? 661. So you could just do a quick search and call action, find a bunch of available phone numbers. If you want something more nice for your yard sign, you can do vanity searches to find a local number that is more your way. You pick that number and it's instantly added into your account. I'll show you some of the other settings that we have in call action and the way that we create this engagement. This is my personal account. So in here, that first and second message for missed phone calls. So what we're doing, the little thing that says greeting there will merge in good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on the time of day that the lead comes in, to create this authentic feeling, right, that it's not a robot, okay? We'll end it with how can I help you, which is we're trying to get that lead. We know who they are from the reverse data pen. We know if they own a house. We know a bunch of other details about them. We understand the context of where the lead came from. So you have a pretty good idea who they are, right? When they respond back, now we know their desire, what they're trying to accomplish, the task, right? So now I can talk their language instantly. Because if I'm telling them what they want to hear, they're going to keep listening. It's pretty simple. So we'll basically identify that. If you don't respond, then the second text message will go out. Call action lets you use emojis and stuff like that, because the interesting thing about emojis is it increases your engagement or response rates by 30%. Okay? And here's the reason why. When I see a smiley face, it brings a smile to my face too.
Even a man.
So, yeah. So it just conveys emotion. And if you read anything about basically language and communication skills, about 70% of communication is actually nonverbal, right? It's not the words that are coming out of your mouth, but it's your intonation, your gestures, your body language, and everything else, okay? Part of the reason why our president can say nothing and we somehow it still gets like in a roundabout way, basically. So, but that non-communication, and this is what emojis do. It's just that same feeling, you get that through that text message, right? It's not just cold text, all of a sudden there's some life to it, and that is basically transferred. So the other text message that we have is this call follow-up. This is if you did answer the phone and you had a conversation with someone. What's going to happen is they have your contact information in the call log. It will only be there for the next 40 calls that they get or 50 calls, and then your phone number is gone forever. Okay? So what call action will do is you can set these guidelines and say, if I had a conversation that lasted 5 or 10 minutes, I want to wait an hour, because if we delay it, it makes people feel special. Okay? And we'll say, hey, just want to say thanks for your time today. Looking forward to helping you with your real estate needs. If I just had a 20-minute phone call and I text that an hour later, what do you think that person is going to text back?
Thanks.
Thanks, I'm looking forward to working with you too.
Have you guys ever gotten that? No? I get them all the time. And you're like, oh, that was really nice. And I reply back all the time.
Yeah. So if you proactively send it, accomplishes a couple things. Your phone is now, or your phone number is in your text message window. Most of us never delete our text messages. In fact, most of us will use the text message as the phone book and be like, I know I talked to someone, and you're looking through that text message, right?
So true. Yeah.
Okay? So this is why we proactively send out that text message in there, get that onto their thing. It also all of a sudden lowers their guard, because who do we normally text? Friends and family, right? So if I sent them a text and that person responded back to me, it almost instantly creates friendship, right? That's why basically we do this. The other thing that ends up happening with that, remember, what was the stat? How many times does someone look at their phone?
85 times.
Okay, so now as they're scrolling through their text messages, what are they going to see 85 times a day?
Me.
Your name, your phone number, right? That brand impression. They're going to see that they even acknowledged that they liked you, right? So it's a little psychological trick that is basically happening there. In call action, you can also include a video if you want. You can include an image of your Zillow reviews or whatever you want in that automated text message that goes back out. We also do this thing that's called a V card. Many of you basically have shared your contact information. So one of the big reasons why we don't answer the phone is we don't recognize the caller ID, right? So what we do is we proactively send that V card to that customer after the last engagement that we have, meaning the last text message. And in that V card is going to include all of your different phone numbers, your office, your cell phone, the call action phone number. If you're using a dialer, you could put your dialer phone number in there. So that way, if that person downloads that, doesn't matter what phone number you call back from, caller ID is going to appear, they're going to answer. Removes frustration, makes you a heck of a lot more efficient. Okay, so those are kind of our automations for that. On an email lead, we give you an email address. You can send us basically into the system your leads from Facebook, Realtor.com, Zillow, your IDX website, anything. We're going to parse that data. We're going to use the call action phone number that you sent it to, and we're going to send back out a text message that says, hey, I just got your email a few minutes ago. I'm on a call right now. What's the best time for us to call? What's the best time for us to connect, basically? Okay? So now you're inserting your phone number into their phone. They think you're being responsive, but it's all basically automated. Okay? And then the most exciting thing that most people are really into is that we build these drip campaigns to nurture leads really long term. If you think about basically most leads, 3 to 5% are going to want to do something pretty much right away, right? This is like your lay down deals. But 95% of your leads are not now. And this is, call me in 6 months because I'm working on my down payment. Call me in a year because I got to wait for my lease to end. Call me da-da-da, whatever it is. There's some reason the vast majority of people don't do something right away. Now what currently happens is you schedule a task into your CRM, and then you wake up in 3 months from now you have 500 tasks that are undone. You're usually pretty frustrated. You're going to hit those first 1 or 2, make that outbound call attempt, not get a hold of them, push that task back. Okay? Just like all of us started with an email address, they had 0 messages. 6 months later, you got 1,000, right? Unread. So the task list is the same. This is why managing a CRM is so difficult. Doing the data entry, managing all of those tasks, pushing all of those tasks back. What call action allows you to do basically is build follow-up campaigns. So after I've spoken to someone, like for example this one, let me just go back a second here. You can see here we build a bunch of templates, but this is going to make 15 outbound attempts over 2 months. Okay, so what we'll do to create this feeling of authentic automation is we'll do something like 24 days from now you would schedule. So as soon as I'm done, I schedule the task, which is this follow-up procedure to basically happen, this automation. In 24 days from now, I'll send a text message saying, hey, told me to call you back in a month. Just reaching out, call me when it's good for you, right? If they don't respond then, we do this little thing that we call a double text because this feels real, right? 10 seconds later, we'll send a second text that says, let me know when you want to get on the call. We're trying to tell them right away that I need to talk to you, okay? Not text, ideally I need to talk to you. And then we could push this out. 3 days later, I send a different message. I remind him, hey, about a month ago, I wanted to follow up with you, just checking in. I sent you a text on, and you can see this little green code. It says, from 3 days ago. So what happens, whatever 3 days ago, it's going to return that date, Wednesday, okay? So it's automation, but it's personalized to every single person based on the time that they inquired with you to begin with. So you can use dates and times and everything else to make it feel very authentic. When that person responds back to this, goes straight to your phone, 0 friction, and you just basically pick it up from there. You think of your sales day, you spend 70 or 80% of your day chasing after having a conversation just to try and get the opportunity to talk to someone. But if we reverse that role and we basically have people contacting us all the time, then you can have 8 hours of conversation a day. And if you're talking to customers for 8 hours a day, what's going to happen to your bank account? Right? It's going to go up by a lot. So that's basically the kind of stuff that we can do. You can also do things like this. You could do a message that's delivered at a particular time. And we give you a couple different ways that you can send messages. You can do video if you want. You can also do a voice recording. So I can come in here, I can basically click on audio file, and I can pre-record a message. So I simply call that number from my cell phone, just like recording a voicemail. And this would be something like, hey, good morning, it's about 9:15, it's Jesse. Sent you a text message 3 or 4 days ago. We originally spoke about a month ago. I'm following up like you asked me, give me a call when you have a chance. Now, is this what you do in real life?
Yep.
Right? It is. All we're doing is we're just automating that entire process. All of that repetitive stuff that you're doing over and over and over. The only difference is I didn't say his name. But the reality doesn't make a difference because all they're hearing, we're touching so many other touch points. The time of day, it's the same phone number. It's referencing back to the original message. Like from a month ago, I know all of those sources. It feels very authentic. And this is where automation, there's a lot of talk of like AI, but you know, if Siri still can't talk to me, there's no way that I'm going to build technology to basically have a real conversation with someone. Automation is designed basically to do the tasks that are repetitive. And that's where we're really focused on as a company is let's get rid of all that repetition, pardon me, repetition over and over.
Can I play a game with you?
Sure.
For a minute?
Yep.
You guys like this?
Yes.
Pretty insane, right? All right, so Jesse, being the industry man, talks to top level producing agents all the time. So now that our minds open up to fast, quick response, I don't know about you, but I've been sitting there thinking of ways to make the phone ring, right? What if you just did what he's talking about to all your clients and past clients on their birthdays? They got a 6 o'clock text message in the morning with a video of you saying happy birthday to them.
Video.
Yes.
Okay, so that's first. You go next and tell me another way to get leads.
So one of the things that we do in Call Action, which is going out right now, is we do a holiday text message. So anyone who's ever contacted you, you can automatically
Anyone who's ever
contacted you
Wow.
through a Call
Fudge.
Action phone number, we'll automatically send an outbound text message. It'll just basically say, hey, just wishing you happy, right now it's a St. Patrick's Day, like don't forget to wear green or else. And that's all it says basically. So it seems like it's coming from a friend. Has a little clover on there.
Okay, my turn. What if you had, when you had an open house, this on a thing saying to enter in for the $100 drawing, text to this number,
Yeah.
right? Now you're automatically entered. It goes back, says, hey, welcome to the open house. Here's my V card. Save it in your phone. Hour later, hey, did you happen to like that house? Or would you like to see some homes, off-market homes? Like while you're doing an open house, you're communicating with them, right? Your
which
turn.
is basically this tool right here. So this is what's called a text tool. So you can set that, what's called a key is the keyword you're asking people to text. Okay? The response is the instant response that goes out, and then you can attach a full follow-up campaign based on that, all fully automated. I'll show you one. This one's kind of interesting. I show you an example of like a lead follow-up, but let me show you this drip campaign we did for Zillow leads, and I can tell you this averages about 85% response rate from consumers. So it's 30 attempts over basically 65 days, so over 2 months of follow-up for you. So 37 seconds later, hey, it's Michael. I just got your inquiry from Zillow.com. I'm gonna, in reference to a property that you're interested in, 11 seconds later, we duplicate this with, what's a good time for us today to get on the phone and set up that showing appointment? We're telling them what we know that they are already trying to accomplish. Not asking them, are you working with an agent? Are you pre-qualified? Or all of those. That's just, you're basically raising friction instantly from that. And then we just basically go, 7 minutes later, hey, I'm getting an available showing time for you. Are you available tomorrow, which would be like Friday? What time do you want to basically see it? Trying to get engagement back from them. Delivering service, but really all we're trying to do is get that conversation going with that person. All fully automated, 85% response rate off of this. We've taken this and did exactly what you're talking about, automate the full follow-up until that person responds.
Right. Okay.
Direct mail piece.
Right. The direct mail piece is amazing, and we have to do that if we're going to do direct mail. What if you guys ran a Facebook ad saying, for the 5 best ways to find off-market homes, text to this number, and we'll shoot you back a downloadable PDF of the free report?
No. So I have something that's similar to that.
Just say better. You're better at this. It's okay.
I don't know. So one of the big things that people struggle with basically is staying on top of finding homes, right? So at first they're all going to go to Zillow, and then what happens, they start getting frustrated because it's backup and pending. So then what ends up happening is they start visiting different websites and start signing up for email alerts. Okay? Eventually they'll end up in Craigslist because they get really frustrated, and what they know is if I go on Craigslist, that house that was posted an hour ago is probably still available. Okay? So those different sources or lead sources like that do really well. So we created a paper that we told people how to automate your home search. Now, how many of you use Google here? Just about everyone, right? Do you know something that's called basically the email alert system from them, from Google?
Yes.
You could do like a home search. So you can enter in keywords, and when Google finds those keywords somewhere online, it's going to send you an email, and you can get this in real time. So what we did is we wrote a piece of paper that just basically says, like, here's 3 tips on making it easy for you to find homes. Sign up for, lead alerts from Realtor.com or Redfin or whatever else, and go in your Google account, set up the parameters of your property, Spanish style, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, as the key word phrases that you're looking for. Get the email alerts from Google. So it doesn't matter where it's at on the internet, because Google's crawling it all anyway. So that was one for consumers. That got a lot of PR basically from that.
Girls first.
Okay, so for each lead source, you need a different phone number, right? If we were to do a Yelp.
Yeah, you don't need
so
to.
we know.
Start with one. Over time, you can grow into it.
Right, well, for our team, like if we
Yeah.
have Yelp and then a
30
sign call one,
listings.
we need different phone numbers, right? Because then the text message that they receive will be different for each one.
Yes and no. So for listings, you don't need 30 different phone numbers
Right,
for your
right.
yard signs.
Right.
We have a couple different ways that this is being handled from different people. So one of them is just a phone number that's just on the yard sign,
Right.
and that's it, right? So you just know that like this person is standing in front of the house,
Right.
and then because we record the phone call, even if they left a voicemail saying, hey, I'm calling about the property, where they texted back, you're going to identify the property anyway if you missed the call, right? And if you talk to them, then we record that conversation, and you're going to still have the address one way or another. I have one guy, what he does, he has 4 signs, because on average he only has 3 to 4 listings. Each sign has a different phone number on there, and he just moves that sign around and tags basically that stuff. And then what we do with that is when he basically gets a phone call, and you get this famous kind of coach on. Imagine I get a phone call from someone in here. Let me just see if I can just find someone really easily. Okay, so let's say I got a phone call and the guy is inquiring about 2800 Highland, right? And I go, oh yeah, that one's listed for 275. They go, oh, okay, thanks. I pop in here and I go, oh, this guy's neighbor lives down the street. Okay, I don't even bother calling them back. What we coach basically, do a full CMA on that person's property. With the cover letter says, hey, I just listed your neighbor's house. They're gonna be moving. We're gonna close it in probably 45 days because it's average days on market. Show a little bit of your knowledge in that cover letter that we pre-wrote for you. And then go and drop that off on that person's doorstep. You don't need to market the whole just listed, just sold for the entire neighborhood, just those people that are inquiring on the yard sign. Now, when that property sells, what you're gonna do is you're gonna go back and door knock that same property and go, hey, guess what? Your neighbor just sold, we just closed it, 97% of list. You know, average days on market in this local area is 45 days. We got it sold in 37. So you're showing that you're better than the market, okay? Just using really basic data, critical for you. Part of the reason why I did all of this stuff for you is I run this little software here, and so we capture every lead that comes through basically that yard sign. I know that basically you called, and I know where you lived, and I have 55 other people that called on this listing. So if you list with me, I can just send a text message to all those 55 people because they're already interested.
Stealing
in
my
this
next one.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah, so if you know it's in the same neighborhood, what if you send a link back here, click here to see our market plan?
Yeah.
They download that.
Yeah.
And by the way, here's the virtual tour of that home.
Yeah.
And by the fourth one, we know you live in the area. Imagine if I could do this with you, what I could do with your buyers, and then add what he just said, and continuously hit them.
Yeah.
Because right now, let's do it, be honest, like, I don't know the number, I'm like, that later, and they don't use a voicemail, it's gone. And that could be, like you said, like Barry Jenkins, 285 calls a month. I'm like, yeah, I might get 5 voicemails. I mean,
yeah.
I just want to go throw up real quick
Yeah.
about that.
Can I jump in? Is Barry still going to agentology and then funneling into you, or is he now using call action right off the?
He does both. He
Does
runs
do
them
both?
simultaneously.
Okay.
So,
I think
yeah.
that's what we need to do. I think that we're getting into it too late in the game.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that we need to be hitting them with call action right away.
So the problem with agentology, I don't know, have you guys been on the other side of that?
Yes.
So an 844 number, right? The text messages are really, really long.
I've read everything you could possibly read. And,
Yeah.
And that's why I'm helping them fine tune that.
Yeah, so the problem is usually it's the friction of the handoff is where really that breaks down. So like we did something where on the call, if you're using agentology, like what Barry's doing, is that he's sending that call connect to a call action phone number that then rings all the agents on his team. So that way you can make sure you get everything answered because they only connect to one phone number at the other end.
Right.
So that's one way that we solve that for that. But I can tell you the first outbound phone call, basically what agentology is doing is a combination of us. The only difference instead of a pre-recorded voicemail that goes out to that person is a real person making the phone call.
Okay.
But what is that customer going to ask that person who's calling, right?
Well, what I'm seeing is probably 95% of what's going there is all unresponsive anyway, and by the time it gets to you, it's 10 days later.
Yeah.
And so at that point, they're gone.
Well, I'll tell you, we have a campaign called Agentology Unresponsive. We convert 50% of those.
Okay.
Because what ends up happening is that that person is not responding to that toll-free number.
Right.
Are you going to respond back to a toll-free number?
No.
Right? If you go to a website and you see an 800 number, what do you purposely look for? The local number, right? Because you're like, I don't want to get stuck in IVR help. So,
Sure.
so you try and
But-
bypass that as much as you possibly can.
But agentology is cool for the first couple days, then they're lost in sync, right? The database. This we can still communicate with
Yeah.
off-market text. We can set a filter in our CRMs to say who's between 3 and 400.
Yeah.
We get a new listing coming up. We can send the text out. Hey, are you still looking for off-market homes between
Yeah.
3 and 400?
Yeah.
We have one, and call us.
Yeah.
We can communicate a lot better with our.
Well, our goal is this: when you talk to someone in that moment, that status of why they're not buying right away is that you create that follow-up campaign that's going to stay in touch with them forever. And all you're going to try and do is just basically be top of mind. Like we send stuff, we basically tell people if you have IDX websites, like, hey, here's the list of open houses, and you just preset that search on your IDX feed. on your website and you text it to them, they think you just did it for them. They click on the link, they're like, oh, look at all the brand new
That's
open
genius.
houses.
Did you guys get that? You guys all understood what he just said?
No, repeat.
It's very important. Here,
Yeah.
say that again.
So when you send a text message, okay, you could perform a search on your IDX website. Does your guys' website do
All of
open
them now
houses?
do. Yeah.
Okay, so do a search for open houses, okay? Because that first stage, remember we talked about the funnel? The first thing they're gonna do is they're gonna dip their feet in terms of looking at open houses. So just give them what they want, okay? Do the search on your website for open houses. You're gonna get this big, long, crazy link usually. Take that link, shorten it. You guys use Bitly or is it okay, so if
We're
you-
getting a little advanced.
Yeah,
but
we're getting a
good.
little advanced,
This
so-
is good now.
So take that link, you drop it in there, and then you could just call it like Santa Clarita Open Houses, okay? So when they look at that text message, they see this link, they're gonna click on that link from their phone. And because 80% of people have a smartphone, it's gonna open up the internet, it's gonna open up your website, and it's gonna take them exactly to that page with all of the open houses. How are they gonna feel? They're gonna be like, oh, that was nice of that guy. And if they see something they like, who are they going to text back to set up the appointment? The person who sent them the text. So,
But you could store any price range, 3 to 4, 4 to 5.
Yeah.
You can even break it down more.
Yeah.
When they call on a house that size, you can say, oh, here's more homes
Yeah.
in that price range.
that little
A
auto
few minutes
text,
later, do you want to see any of those?
yeah, that little auto text, those canned responses is exactly what we basically say is, you work probably a specific area, you buy leads in a specific area, just do a bunch of those preset messages with a bunch of URLs, and you just be like, oh, here's the most recent list, boom. Text it to them, now you get them onto your website and into your ecosystem. You don't want them going all over the place. Yeah,
Thanks for coming in, Jesse.
yeah, no problem.
Can you change the dollar block specific to a marketing niche?
Yes. Yeah. Our platform is, we're just a platform, so it could be anything. We have attorneys, I have like a Botox clinic. We have all kinds of stuff. So,
Crazy.
I have a question for,
yeah, go ahead. I'll be there in a second.
So for phone numbers that maybe have been acquired prior to signing up with Call Action, can we enter those phone numbers in and get the demographics?
Great question.
So we're very apprehensive of that because what we don't want to do is start texting someone that's not expecting a text from you. Because then what ends up happening is they tend to block that number. Same reason why you won't respond if you don't recognize the caller ID, right? So we like to go from day 0 kind of going forward basically. There are some ways that you could do it. I know we're on Facebook Live and stuff like that, so I'll
It's
save
in our private
I'll
group.
save those. Oh, okay. This is private group?
You're not live. It's private
Oh,
group.
okay.
It's just these agents.
So private group basically is this. Have you guys heard of Slide Broadcast? Or Mojo Dialer? Anyone using any one of those? So you can mask your outbound phone number with a call action phone number. Send a voicemail out to everybody. Upload your 30,000 people. Be like, hey, it's Jesse. I got some new property in the area. Give me a call back when you have a chance. Well, what happens when you do a slide broadcast is we're going to leave the voicemail, but that person most of the time doesn't listen to the voicemail. They hit redial. And now all of a sudden they're into your system. And when they come in, what happens with the cell phone companies, and this is the other reason, more of a technical thing, is that if you just start randomly texting a phone number and there's no kind of previous phone call or history, those text messages get blocked by basically the cell phone carriers. Because they're going to look at it just like email spam. It's really the same thing. The only thing is you don't know that those messages are not being delivered because they're not telling us. So,
One thing I
Okay.
noticed,
Sorry.
when you have a
Or
conversation
Johnny.
with
Yeah.
by text, you haven't stored their name in your phone,
mhm.
but now it starts to say,
Maybe,
Cynthia.
yeah.
And so if it's someone that may know you just by your name,
Yeah.
it starts to let them know, hey, maybe you should store
And-
this phone number.
And that
This is
comes
that
from
person.
the email. If you email them and it has the same phone number, and this is why I was telling you it's important to have the phone number as text as part of that email body, that's how the phones are creating the association.
By an email?
Via the email that you email to them, that email basically has a phone number and it has the from address, so when they recognize the caller ID, they go, okay, in the email there's this phone number that pops up, might be this person who sent you that email. So, go for it.
But this is a behavior analysis
Okay.
question.
So based on your industry experience, I'm curious to see what your thoughts are. I've heard two different points of view with initial call voicemail. If whatever it is, whatever time of day you do call in the first minute's time, and maybe they're still looking online, whatever it is, they send you to voicemail, do you recommend leaving the message? Because I've heard that would be good in the name of you identify yourself as the first to act.
Yep.
However, I've heard it by not leaving it, it also, who is this? And then you keep calling back so they don't block you. So two very different schools of thought. What are your views on that?
I've seen both. I think, it's best to just basically identify yourself. And actually what we basically tell people is send a text before you call.
That's new.
I say that to everybody. Text me before you call.
Yeah.
Hey, are you free at 1? Yeah, just send me a text before you call.
Even
calling
on
you
the
now.
initial lead coming in.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if we get a sync lead.
Why wouldn't you, if the call comes in, why wouldn't you text back a video? Hey, this is John Labick. Thank you so much for calling on my hotline. I can do all these things for you.
Okay.
Meanwhile,
I wouldn't recommend the video on the first shot
Right.
because what happens, again, the cell phone carriers, text spam is becoming a really
That's a
big
good
issue.
point, too.
Okay?
And
So you
feelings they'd be hurt.
your first thing should just be, if they called in, the cell phone carriers realize that there's an established relationship. The consumer engaged you. Okay? So this is why responding back then it's okay if you send a video. But if you're just basically going straight, like I got an email lead and that email lead had a phone number and you try and send a big file with a big attachment, probably never going to be delivered.
Okay.
So what I like to try and do is send an instant text that just says, hey, I just got your inquiry, calling you right now. That way when the phone basically rings, because here's the thing with the text message trick is, if my phone rings, I won't even pick it up, right? But if I get a text, what am I going to do?
Look at it.
Yeah.
And if I already have the phone in my hand and it starts ringing, hello?
what if you sent a bomb link later on?
That's fine. Because that link, it's not a file
the huge
attachment.
data.
Right.
Yeah, it's not the data. You're not eating up their data.
Okay, so I guess we're almost out of time. We went over a little bit. I have one more thing. If you have listings, and we do, and this is the first reason to have call action, you see they live here, own a home, and that's a potential seller. That's a no-brainer. My thoughts going a little further, if you see they live in Delaware and have their address, I pick up the phone, call my buddy in Delaware, say, dude, you need to get on this person. It looks like they may be looking in my area. Will you give me a referral fee and help you refer them back to me as a buyer's agent in Santa Clarita?
That's why we talk about the contingency. Build the story first, educate them, get the trust basically, educate them about the process, and then they're going to tell you, like if they're an out-of-area person, they'll be like, well, I'm in Las Vegas. They'll be like, oh, I have one of my best buddies is in Las Vegas, and then you figure it out thereafter and do that broker referral.
Right.
Leveraging basically your opportunities, maximizing your revenue opportunities off of each one of those phone calls. So there's so many of those like little nuances, you just got to be on it.
Okay, cool. And then if you scheduled something like, in the sequence, are you interested in getting pre-qualified, and then you can send a link to your Skyline lender and say, here, click here to call our
let me show
partner.
you. Yeah, I'll show you one in here. Let's see, where am I at?
Martha?
Here.
Brought lunch. I know you did. Me. I bought you guys lunch today.
So I'll show you one thing in here. On these Zillow leads, we're getting really high response rate because part of it is we start off identifying the property, like, hey, we're trying to get you an appointment. But as you start kind of going down, what we found is we basically start to move this over. Hey, it looks like, good news, looks like there's a brand new listing that's coming up in your area. I think you'll
That's
love.
exactly what I was talking about.
Yeah, we start to transition them out of that, and then are you interested in open houses? Do you want me to send the newest listings? But there's one in here, we go a little bit further back, that basically says like, hey, since you're looking at houses, you probably need some mortgage information. So we found like the Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, like home buyer's guide, basically it's a PDF. I just uploaded it to my website, URL, short link, and I just texted to them like, hey, take a look at that. And then I follow that up with like, do you have any questions about the guide? Do you need a lender? So it just always looks like you're coming from a place of contribution, trying to help them do their business, even though you're not really talking to them.
So you're doing all of these text messages, it could be over a long period of time.
Yeah, really long time.
They respond.
Goes right back to you.
It goes to me, but how do I know what's going on with them? How do
Because when you click on, when we send you a link on your phone, let me just show you, let me go into here. On your phone, it will look like this, basically. We send you a link, you just click on the link, and it's just a normal kind of text message window that you're already used to. And you can scroll through and see
And you can, the whole conversation.
the whole conversation, every single thing that's ever been done.
Intelligently.
Yes. Yeah. And if it's like a Zillow lead, we actually take a picture of the email so you can have the addresses and all of that stuff. And right now we're working on extracting basically the addresses individually, so not just the full address of the property that they inquired about, but we're breaking out zip code, city, state, zip, and street, so that in our text message sequence that are going to go out, we can send out a text message like, hey, are you still looking in Santa Clarita? That way it feels really one-on-one, but we just use that first little bit of information that they gave to us that we can verify, and then we start building on that. Hey, I got some other listings in this zip code, or are you looking for other houses on this street? You could start making those messages so personal to them. Yeah, so it takes a little bit of time that first time to build those out, and we try and build them for you because we're pretty used to this stuff.
I can see how Barry could geek out on this for hours.
Yeah. Yep.
So do you sign up, do you offer ongoing training?
So we have a private Facebook group where I'm pretty active in terms of giving you best practices and tips and tricks and stuff like that that you can use. So yeah, we're pretty active on that.
Do you respond back to them via your app or the link, or do you respond to them on your phone, or how does it keep track of all that?
Yeah, so you would just come straight in here. So when you click on the link, it's going to open up the app, log you into that person's contact, and then you just start text messaging like you would from there. You can use the voice dictation if you're into that, or you can have these preset messages that you can respond to really easily. If you have images that you want to select, you can pull the images. You can also pull out whatever you've already texted them. On the mobile, you just click on this link at the top. This gives you all of their data, basically. We have a notes section. So if you do notes, the nice part about the notes on our stuff is it opens up the keyboard, and then again, you can use the microphone and just voice dictate the notes.
And it flies into sync, or
follow-up boss, or whatever else. So you have like 100% insight in terms of exactly what is happening. Some of the new stuff we're doing is we record all of the inbound phone calls, but we're getting ready to start recording all of the outbound phone calls too. So you have everything that has ever been said with that particular customer.
That's what I mean, like every day a new integration or something is coming out.
And then there's some really like high level stuff that's kind of coming down the pipe for that. But this is the interface. If I click on the little gear, I could basically assign that drip campaign back to that person. So if they told me, call me in a week, I can have preset 1 week. It's one click, and then that gets synced into your CRM.
Got it.
So that way if you think of the CRM, you mostly send emails, right? That's what you do in the CRM system. Maybe you'll save the birthday. You're supposed to save notes and stuff like that, but this is the hard work of working basically a CRM system. That's why most people fail at using CRM systems, because you got to change your behavior, right? You got to be on it. Like the moment you give up, then it's like your email. All of a sudden, you have 500 unread emails.
Is there a better CRM that your app interfaces best with, or?
I mean, all of our stuff is pretty solid. Anything like Follow-Up Boss, let me see, I think I have my list on here right now. Oops, what did I do here? Wrong section. So if you go here in the top, you'll see integrations. This is our current list of, these are API level. So that basically means every single thing that happens in call action is all synced into the other end, all automatically. So Chime, Contactually, Follow-Up Boss, Lion Desk. A lot of people are on Lion Desk because it's cheap. Basically, it's like 25 bucks a month.
Top producer, Lion Desk, and Follow-Up Boss is all you guys.
Those are some of the biggest companies around. So this is like 90% of the real estate CRM. Next week we have Zoho, HubSpot, And we have
But Commissions Inc. is on there too, though.
Commissions Inc. is a problem because those guys are trying to build a walled garden and they don't want people going into their walled garden. They're taking that KW stance that
So
we're
how
going
do
to do
you-
everything.
What's the back? What's
The back
what's
door.
the fix for that?
The back door into Commissions Inc. is we can create all of the leads inside of it. We can't do all of the updates. So the way that basically works, pretty simple. I'll just go into my personal number here. So if you click on Manage, Lead Export Integration right here, you put your Commissions Inc. CRM Connect email address. So every call, every text message, anything that ever happens is created in Commissions Inc. You also get all of the data, the full email. That updated text messages and stuff don't. But we also have a fix for that, which is this. In conversations, if you go here into actions, you hit copy conversation, that will copy every single voice transcription,
And then drop it in.
and it's just a copy and paste. It's one click. So
They're killing themselves with this.
Yeah,
I don't know why they're doing this.
I think
Everybody's bitching and moaning about this.
Yeah, I think we're gonna get them pretty soon because
Yeah,
we
they
do
have to,
we do
right?
real geeks. So
Did you guys appreciate Jesse today?
yeah.
So much.
Can we have a group picture with Jesse before we eat? And then just a group picture, and then I want Dawn to come up here for a few minutes.